Start the official part of this after-work gathering. Again, a diversity event, IDEA Diversity, dedicated to geographical diversity. And it is my great pleasure to ask again our Vice President for Diversity Initiatives to introduce the speakers and to moderate the session. Mary, please.
Thanks, everyone. This has really been an excellent diversity day, starting with breakfast this morning, going through lunch with a wonderful speaker, and now our three speakers that we have in succession this evening. The topic, of course, is focused on geographical diversity, and the topic of all of their remarks will be benefits and challenges of a geographically diverse workforce in a globally acting space industry. And so I'm going to, what we're going to do before I start to introduce Mark Mulqueen, we're going to have each of the speakers come forward and speak briefly on their experiences, the benefits that they have seen, and the challenges they have faced in managing a globally, geographically diverse workforce, and how they have solved those issues. And then there's going to be a short Q&A for each of the speakers, and then we'll wrap up, and then we're going to have networking, enjoy the wine, enjoy food, and so forth. So if I may, I'm going to start with Mark Mulqueen, who is he is the program manager for the International Space Station at the Boeing Company, and also our colleague, vice chair of the IAF IRC, the Industry Relations Committee. So Mark, if you would start. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, hello, good evening, everybody. I guess I get to start off. This is a great panel opportunity to talk about diversity, and I'm very honored to be here with all of you this evening. As Mary said, I am the program manager for the International Space Station contract that Boeing has with NASA. But by its nature international, it is extremely international geographically for all the companies, agencies, and support teams that work on the space station in general. It's a very successful, and as you know, it's been operating for 20 years, and it's got 18 years continuous of human space flight, of humans living in space. I'd also like to thank the International Astronautical Federation for hosting this evening's event and inviting me to come up here and talk about diversity. You know, and all of us being members of the IAF, we talk about diversity, we call it 3G. As Mary and mentioned, it's gender, geographic, and generational. And it's true for all diversity of thought. If you think about getting the best solutions, the best talent, the most challenging things, to have the best of all those things, you have to look beyond your comfort zones, beyond your areas of location. So think diversity and think very far out, far-reaching. So you know, Boeing itself operates in 11 research centers across the world in 11 different countries. These are research, kind of like IRAD-type centers. We have over 50 development centers across the world, and there's over 160,000 team members, of which about a third of it's internationally located. So Boeing believes that diversity is the solution for all the development and products that we have in the future. As a company, we see a global marketplace that has partners, not just sales and deliveries. It has partners because it's about partnership of technology sharing, about technology building to get to where we need to. In the airplane industry, it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Trillion-dollar, yes. The space industry, if you think about what we started in Space Station, of the 15 member nations that started this treaty way back, the intergovernment agreements way back 25 years ago or more, and you think about our next platform, which is going to go to the moon, and we call it the Lunar Orbiting Platform Gateway. It's going to be a member nations' contributions from all kind of similar ones from the original 15, but we're going to have new entries, and even on ISS we talk about new nations coming on board and helping us out on ISS too. So there's a lot going on. International cooperation is the must. We got to depend on international cooperation. We can't just rely on one nation doing it all themselves. And so I think if you think about diversity in the geographical sense, it's going to be huge in the future for space. You know, in my position, I'm very fortunate to have worked with a lot of international companies, agencies, leaders, engineers, and it's there I see the smarts, the breadth of what we have as a united world to bring the best solutions, the best ideas, the best components, the best technologies to our platform. And it's been outstanding, and I've enjoyed it for the last 25 years on Space Station. You know, even when you think about the get hardware into space, it's launch rockets. Well, you know, so think about our footprints of launching. We're in Kazakhstan launching crews. Soon we'll be back in Florida. When we talk about cargo launches, we're in Florida, Virginia, French Guiana, Japan, Kazakhstan. So we're already internationally intertwined with the rocket industries that is out there to launch hardware into space and for the space station. Think about our control centers in Germany and Houston and Japan and Moscow. They're all interrelated, 24/7, 365, talking to each other about the operations going on in space. You think about the crew and the cosmonauts. Again, international cooperations and living together and developing what they need to do. It's an honor to be here, and if you think about the next 20 or so years, international cooperation is going to continue on geographically around this world, and the best of the best is diversity and inclusion. And so it's going to be very smart for all our companies, all our agencies, to continue to have a diverse workforce. I'll pause and allow us to see if we have any questions, I guess. Of course, first speaker, it might be a challenge that people even figure out the...
Maybe there are some questions from the audience without using electronic means? Not yet. So maybe we can come back to questions later then, okay, after the next speakers.
You know, I can actually stay down on the floor.
Okay, that's true. He's got a mic. Thank you.
From this point forward, I am not coming back on this stage again. Our next speaker is someone that I'm personally fond of. He happens to be my boss. And it's Scott Faust, who is the Vice President for the Advanced Technology Center, Lockheed Martin Palo Alto, the space company. And I can say just about anything I want to about Scott because on April the 6th, he's retiring. So he'll be, Scott, please.
Well, thank you, Mary, and I also want to thank the IAF for inviting me to participate in this discussion about geographic diversity. It's a real honor to be here. So a little bit truth in advertising. I've been an R&D guy my whole life, and for 22 years I ran a small company as a small R&D company, 50 people, but it was distributed across 3 offices. Every one of our projects was executed by people out of each office. So what I tell that story because in my company, they had the DNA that the best way to work was actually distributed. But that's not the common way of thinking. We'll come back to that. As an R&D guy, I was trained early on, kind of was told, you know, what's important is to generate new ideas, and the way to generate those new ideas is at the seams. You know, sparks occur at the seams. So it's actually really important when you're tackling hard problems is to get people from different experiences, different perspectives, different backgrounds working together. That's why diversity is so important. And when you want to tackle the toughest problems, you want to get the best people from those different perspectives. And when you go to do that, guess what? They're not going to be co-located. They're going to be in different parts of the world. And so that's the objective. And I've been on a number of projects that were exactly that way. We wanted to get the best technologists, and they were, in fact, global. In one of our projects, we were working with folks from Edinburgh to DC to California. You mean these were widely distributed. And you know, we wanted to mention some of the challenges. Always the challenge, and it's appropriate tonight because we're all working after work here, right? It's the time zone challenge. And you know, one of the things we discovered when you had a whole company that was, whose head was in this, is they, from first moment when you're setting up meetings, you were always sensitive to that. And I know, because when I'm living in California, I can't tell you the number of times I get called to meetings that are being driven by somebody on the East Coast that starts at 8 a.m. Washington, D.C. time, and so I'm having to get up to support a meeting at 5 a.m. These are challenges, and they're cultural challenges, they're DNA challenges. Now, one of the things that I got a chance to be exposed to very early on, one of the fields I was exposed to is cognitive science, and there's a famous cognitive science guy who wrote a paper that I want you guys to think about. It was called Beyond Being There. And what that means, because we know he was actually being asked to tackle the problem of how can I have people in different places be interacting as if they're standing at the same whiteboard, writing on the whiteboard. That's what we believe is the nirvana. And he goes, he actually did some research and he discovered if that's your objective, that's your target, they will always have a better experience if they're in the same room. But what if I could create a better experience than simply being there on the same whiteboard? What if the information technology that's helping connect us can actually be an added person in the collaboration that can actually raise the game? And it turns out that's actually quite possible. And I've personally been involved in probably half a dozen different projects where that's played out. And I remember one way back in the late 80s where we were working with a very geographically diverse team. We were competing with another group that was co-located. Because we were working with a geographically distributed team, we had to develop techniques that allowed us to do better. And as a group, we actually beat them out. And that's counterintuitive because most people believe it. And at the end of the day, that is our challenge. Because still today, the intuition is, I want to work with people in the same room. Because of my experience and because of my company, I've always valued the ability to collaborate worldwide, to be able to create more sparks, to create that geographically diverse team. But the reality is we need to change people's beliefs. And and it's an ongoing thing. It's changing the DNA. So my company had the DNA of distributed collaboration, but I'll tell you, in other experiences, other places I've done, they just don't get it. So as a community, we need to do everything we can to change that mindset and to really be able to energize an entire global community to make this happen. So with that, I will, questions?
Well, you are all very digital resistant today, but maybe you have questions from the floor. Not the case, okay. So I give back to Mary.
And I'm not going to get on. Thank you, Scott. Our last speaker is Carlo Mira, who I so enjoy working with on the IRC. He is the Director of Sales Products at Airbus Defense and Space. Carlo, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for your introduction, and it's a real honor for me to be here. When I was asking myself why I should have been the Airbus representative in here, I found somehow the answer already in my DNA, because as you can hear from my accent, I'm an Italian citizen. I'm working in Germany, my business line is in France, and I'm living in the Netherlands. Well, there are drawbacks to that. I'm not going to tell you that I'm paying taxes in all these nations, for example. I'm not quite sure about my pension contributions. I'm sure I will write a book in the end on that, but this is not the topic of the discussion today. The geographical identity of our company is really one of the top asked questions in our company, and it's very interesting, and I want to give you a couple of anecdotes on that, because when I speak about that with some of my peers, they say, oh, absolutely, we are a French-German company. That's very true, because that is where everything was born. It was a French-German initiative that put Airbus all together. But then it was interesting to hear our CFO speaking at our sales convention 2 weeks ago, where he was saying, Well, actually, you know, we are an Anglo-Saxon company. And the reason of that is because most of our shareholders are in UK or in the US. That's true. He's the CFO. That's the way to think. Incidentally, he's a British guy. Then I speak to my sales colleagues. And then from their standpoint, they say, I mean, we are where the market is, therefore where our customers are. Then I go and look at our books. We are an Asian company. So again, this is simply to give you an anecdote on something that is a global company today, which is employing more than 135,000 people across 35 countries. And if I remember well, I count 180 sites with 130 nationalities. Clearly, geographical diversity is a major point and is a major value as well. I mean, I was trying to write down something during the weekend when I was given the task on that, and I was really counting a number of things that were coming from my experience that were real value. I'm not really ranking all of them as in order of precedence, but definitely one of the major things that I value as a benefit of geographical diversity is that bringing all diverse cultures together inspire creativity. Inspiring creativity, you drive innovation. By driving innovation, you bring new things, you create new products, you create attention, you create a much more exciting working place. So it's a win-win situation that we are experiencing and that we want to enjoy, not only as a company, because it gives value to what we are doing, but also for our workforce, because it creates a stimulating working environment where people have a sense of belonging and then a desire to deliver always more and more. So these are things that I've experienced on my skin, and then definitely the International Space Station program was just one example of an incredible endeavor that was putting together different cultures. This is really every day now, because when we have our Monday morning management meeting, we are 12 people, and I count 6 nationalities around the table. So it's really something which is becoming more and more global, and this is a flow that you cannot really stop, because basically there is a, let's say, a continuous, let's say, added value which is brought by these different cultures, which is giving, let's say, a sense of belonging and competitiveness in the company that we did not have when we were the, let's say, the simple French-German outfit. There are other points that I wanted to address, and this is primarily globally. I mean, in the beginning, we used to have, allow me to call, ambassadors of our company going everywhere in the world, so in Asia or in Latin America and so on. That thing has changed over time. We are now really working much more with locals, because locals understand the culture better, because locals know much more on how things can be done in that environment, and they can bring new inspiration also in the headquarters, and new ways of doing business, create new models. So this is a sort of, let's say, give to be given, if you want, which is providing an entertaining and stimulating, let's say, working environment from my point of view. I think it's not just us, but I read also a bit about statistics by, you know, companies like Glassdoor or Randstad. By the way, I should say that Randstad has ranked again Airbus as the best employer in France for the 3rd year in a row. Okay, allow me some commercials here. And they were basically saying that diverse teams are more productive, and they are also performing better. As I said before, they provide a sense of belonging. They provide different view angles from which a certain problem can be tackled, and that can be inspirational also to others that have been always been working in the same way. So it's a stimulus on work, and that's why the company has created a mobility program, which is rather important, not only as a form of education, as a sort of professional development, if you want, but is also considered as a key element in recruitment in the moment in which some internal vacancies are considered. Did you do mobility? Where, and what did you do? These are 2 key questions that are important because they are indirectly showing the open-mindedness of the people that have been part of it. Another aspect which is important and becoming more and more relevant, which I just wrote 2 minutes before coming here, is coming from the digital society. We are all going to work more with a geographical dispersed workforce. Remote working is a matter of fact. And then most of the times you have teams with whom you exchange, let's say, digital data, that are scattered everywhere, but that are part of your team. So again, all these things are key factors that will become more and more popular, in my opinion, as digitalization will go forward, and that will, let's say, drive further, let's say, the need to have a full understanding of geographical diversity and respect. Enough said about good things. There are also, let's say, points for improvement in general. And when I was listing some of them, clearly each culture is different. And we need to be sure, especially who is coaching or managing the international teams, need to be sure that nobody's left behind. I mean, there are some more conservative cultures that are not really used to speak up. However, sometimes when they speak, they really give some essential big words of wisdom. So we really need to try to capture the best of breed from all these areas and being able to do this work in an integrated way. That's not easy. That's not easy at all. It's a combination of soft skills, experience, and so on, and still you can do better. Yes, we have prejudice sometimes. We have negative cultural stereotypes. Sometimes you can depart from that, but only you can win most of them only in the moment in which we are used to work in a full international environment every day. Because in the moment in which you are really looking not farther beyond your team of guys that probably are speaking the same dialect as yours, then this is not really facilitating your ability to meet the cultural challenges of the industry 4.0, for example. Speaking by experience, employment laws, taxations, cost of accommodating in a workplace, man, are still a nightmare. I mean, we are really working in Europe on easy mobility of citizens, ability to be able, for example, to claim the same pension if you've been working anywhere in Europe as if you were in your motherland. Well, I hope I can come back in 5 years to report about that and then tell you what are my experiences when I retire. One other thing, and then I want to close with that. Actually, no, two things, because there's another good idea that came to my mind. The professional etiquette is very different from culture to culture. I mean, when I moved to the Netherlands, I was amazed to see people that were basically walking the floors in the office without shoes. I don't know, barefoot. I thought, okay, it's kind of normal then, but this helped in opening and understanding how the environments are, or during meetings, having people that are still eating their soup during the meeting. Fine. As I said, look at all the positive aspects in all these small things, and then you will really build up a very powerful system. One last thing that we are launching in the company, which I think is very exciting, is what we are calling crowd stuffing. Don't know if you ever heard about that, but this is something that I experienced recently. It's the possibility of someone to participate from remote to a project which is somewhere else. This, even if doesn't imply direct mobility into a different place, will help you in getting the flavor of what it means working in France, what it means working in Dubai, what it means working in Beijing. So all these things together are really important and are essential in order to open further our minds and maintain a good, let's say, retention of our qualified workforce. Thank you for your attention. I hope that you enjoyed that. And if you have questions, wow, I see some, then I will be glad to answer to them. Thank you.
No questions for Carlo? Well, I thought you so wonderfully expounded on those, but shall we? Do you want to discuss those a bit?
I'll start the first one because I think it really goes to all of us. So, as nationalism makes a resurgence, I would probably, you can tell I'm from the United States, and clearly there's political arguments going across oceans. I'll say this much: I have probably 24 Russian friends that will email. We know about our families and children, and I do a lot of visiting with them. And I don't think that any nationalism that may be implied in some of our countries is any substitute into how we respond and react and partner with other countries. Because if it's about keeping humans alive and safe in space, the only answer is the right answer. And it is not about a political running of a platform. And you can think about that in airplanes, other things that our company sells, and other companies that are here with you today. You know, those things, again, they fly. The best value we provide for sales for these components and these things that are in the industry is on return on sales, the profits we make off those for the dividend takers, for the shareholders, which we're all on. Airbus, he told me, one of the largest country that owns Airbus is in the U.S. Well, there you go, diversity of thought. We're investing for the long term, and those returns are mandatory. So if I need to find the best talent, it is universally and diverse, whatever it is, those are where we go look, and you have to be about the product and the answer and not about the person. Otherwise, you will be second, if not lower in the pecking order of deliveries and sales, that's for sure. Does age make a difference when considering cultural differences? You know, so I say no. You know, as an aging, ISS is now an aging program. I'll call it that way. It's already been up there for 20 years, and it's an aging program. So a lot of the folks that were in the youth in the beginning, like myself, are aging with the vehicle. And so as you think about that, the diversity of new ideas and creativeness and actually faster ways of doing things are coming from the young folks that are joining the team, joining our companies, because they have more, well, one, it's not, we always done it this way attitude. They have, well, I can see simpler ways to do it. So youth and the movement to bring in new thoughts, new ways of doing business, younger engineers for whatever the 5, 10, 15 more years of space station, it's a must because the rest of us, as we age, we will need to be replacing, and you have to continuously look for your leaders and your top talent to keep this safe in all our industries. It's very important. So I don't think there's any substitute for cultural differences or with age, because I think it's important to find the best talent to do what you need. Or if the best talent is senior, the same thing. So I'll let my partners here.
Well, I like the second one because it really recalls me a number of stories. Those of you that have been knowing me for a while may probably know that my first IAF was in 1989. So there was not even a young professional program at that time. And then I started to, let's say, be propositive, start to do things, and maybe even being very motivated. And then people are saying, Carlo, well, you don't have experience. I mean, you better see on how things are, and then you will speak up. So I took a number 25 years ago when I was kind of standing in line, waiting for my turn. And then now, basically, I observe a completely different trend where there are, let's say, the need of disruptive new ideas is practically causing a lot of people to jump the queue, in a way, and I'm standing with the number in my hands. So I've been the young guy, of course, 25 years ago. I'm now the, let's say, experienced guy in a certain way. Now I tell you that in media start virtus, in the sense that the real thing is find the proper balance between the two best of, let's say, of both categories. I mean, of course, the young workforce brings energy, and I'm glad to see Luis and Pierre-Alexis that are basically our, let's say, energetic part in the exploration program in the company. They bring new ideas, they bring networking capabilities, they bring ability to better understand the new jargon, the new tools, the new mechanisms, the hackathons and things that it took me days to learn. This is all good. All together mixed with, let's say, experience, with coaching, with vision, and things like that. Put all these things together, in my opinion, and you will really have a recipe for a successful geographical distributed team. Thank you. There is another one. Okay, then on this one, for example, the company is making regional recruitments. I mean, our recruitments are really global, but especially in Europe. I mean, we are making regional roadshows in some areas that are not traditional, let's say, Airbus nations, but where, especially because of the involvement in the European community, let's say the ability to mobilize the citizen from one nation to another is more possible. I remember 2-3 years ago, I was involved in a Czech-Hungarian campaign. There have been others with Baltic lands, and so on, in order, let's say, to try to take the best of breed of people that are coming from different cultures with, let's say, a high qualified education, and that can bring value to our, let's say, to our company. The same is, of course, happening also regionally, because as I said before, whenever we have a production plant or a service area in a certain region, this is done through local recruitment and not by secondment of people from Europe there, because of the reasons I mentioned before. You want to take it?
On the question about the first question that was up there, which has disappeared, does it make you blind to age differences, cultural differences? When I first saw that question, the first thing that jumped in my mind was an old Far Side cartoon. I don't know if you could remember seeing this. This was like in 1996, where they showed two dogs typing on a computer terminal, and they say, on the internet, they don't know you're a dog. And that's actually really quite important, because, Carlo mentioned, we do come in sometimes with our biases. And sometimes by actually doing early interactions in a quite unique forum, you're blind to that. And there's some opportunities and some possibilities in that. So something to be thinking about. In terms of the specific actions our company is taking to promote geographic diversity, it's our engagement in activities like the International Astronautics Federation, the International Astronautics Congress, where we're trying to find the best technology, the best thinkers in the world, and we want to embrace that.
Let's have another round of applause, please, for Scott and Carlo and Mark. Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of the evening. There is food and drink, so enjoy.
We had 3 great sessions about diversity this morning at breakfast, for the lunch, and right now. And so I want to thank all the speakers who allowed this day to be possible. But most of all, of course, I want to thank you, Mary, because you made an outstanding work, and we know what we have, all of you, and I think that you are the best example of diversity in the Bureau of the IIF. So I ask you to applaud Mary. And thanks a lot. Thank you. And now the bar is open.